Hi, I'm Noonie. Welcome to my channel. This is my first video, even though I just previously recorded a video and had no sound. So I wasted my whole story 20 minutes ago. But I'm redoing it now. Obviously, I'm very new to this. I wanted to go ahead and talk about my nasal fracture to my nasal correction to then my nasal collapse and then revision rhinoplasty. So to start things off, I want to say I had a normal nose. It was a very cute Puerto Rican nose. I am Puerto Rican. You know, I consider a Puerto Rican nose like, you know, a little bit round and soft and kind of a little bit bulbous, but it was still soft, feminine nose. Even though it wasn't small, it was cute. It was cute on my face. It was fine. So never had a problem with my nose, of course, until I fell. But here's a picture just for, I guess, how do you say, reference of what my nose was before I fell. That's me in 2012, Christmas of 2012, before I fell and broke my nose. It was straight, a little round and bulbous, but soft, like I said, and feminine, so I never had a problem with it. It was kind of like, you know, what you would consider like a J-Lo-esque nose, one that's, you know, not small, but it's round and it's feminine and it suits her face. So that's what I always felt about my nose. Well, fast forward, well, that was December 2011, so it happened 2012. So the beginning of 2012, both of our dogs died within 6 weeks of each other. And it was very, very hard for us. And I felt like 6 months later, I was like, we really need to get another dog. I cannot be without a dog. So we found, my husband was, by the way, totally against this. His heart was still broken from our English Bulldog, which had passed away when we were not present. So it was still like a very sore, kind of sensitive subject for him. I feel like he totally wasn't ready, but I was desperate and ready and felt like our home needed to have another dog. So we got our dear sweet French Bulldog, Chachi, and here she is. Little cutie, little sweetie, but she is the reason for my nasal fracture. There she is smiling. Love her, love her, love her. Okay, so long story short, my old dogs, we used to just open the door. They were highly trained. We would stand at the door. They'd just walk on out, pee and poo, and walk right back in. We'd close the door behind them, and that's how they used to go to the bathroom. They were kind of lazy. They didn't really like to be outside very much. They were kind of like lazy homebodies. So we were used to that. Well, when we got Chanel, her nickname's Chachi, but when we got Chanel, she obviously needed to be trained. So I thought that I was going to train her the way my other dogs were trained, which was leashless. You know, you walk outside with them and they do their business and then they follow you straight into the house. Well, I was, of course, barefoot. I had opened the door, had walked on out with the dog, and we have a pretty, you know, large, we have a lot of land between the houses. So, walked out. She, for some reason, decided she didn't want to do her business, and she was going to take off running. I don't know what she saw, but she took off running down the street. So here I am, barefoot, running after, chasing this little puppy, this 10-week-old puppy, running. Well, she gets past two houses finally, and this house in particular has a kind of sloped downward driveway, but behind their house, it is woods. So when I see her approaching this second house, I am like, if that dog gets back there, there is no way I am ever finding her again. Because first of all, I'm barefoot, and secondly, I'm terrified of the woods. So I was like, there's just no way. I have to catch this dog before she gets to their backyard. So I'm like catching up to her. I'm on their driveway, right? Their driveway goes downward. It's concrete. And I decide that I'm going to make a fast, quick thinking decision. And I am going to leap forward as I'm running downward. And I'm going to just stretch my arms out and I'm going to catch her, right? Because in my mind, I am just the most athletic person that there is. In reality, no, I am not. I am far from athletic. But in my mind, I thought that this was going to work out. I was going to be like diving for first base, and I was just going to catch her in my arms. Well, what really ended up happening is I dove, and I had my outstretched arms, but since it was in a downward projection, and I evidently missed her, right? So now imagine my arms have this air in them. There's nothing in them. And there's nothing to stop my fall or my face from hitting the cement. So my face hits the concrete driveway head first. And I just remember the crack. It was like a snap and then blackness. Well, I ended up coming to. Nobody, by the way, was anywhere to be found in the neighborhood. I mean, I don't know why. There was just nobody out. So I was like passed out on this person's driveway. Well, I come to because the puppy, she decides she's going to start licking me because she's like, owner, why aren't you chasing me anymore? It was so much fun. What happened? Well, she's lick, 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 lick. So that's how I wake up. I wake up with dog licking me. I grab her and I remember the very last thing that had happened, which was the snap and the blackout. So I'm like, first thing I did after I grabbed her was touch my nose. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I am pretty sure my nose is broken. So I go home, drop the dog off inside, close the doors, and I tell my husband, baby, I think my nose is broken. He looks at me and he's like very calm. He's, very calm person. He tells me, I'm sure you're fine. And I was like, no, I just fell down a cement driveway running after the dog. And I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh my gosh, my face was growing and growing and growing. This one right side of it was just growing. My lip was completely like, totally huge. And I look at my husband and I'm like, I really think my nose is broken. And he's like, no, I fell over my bike as a kid, like completely over the handlebars, and I landed on my head, and, I never broke my nose. I'm sure you're fine. So I'm almost doubting myself at this point. I grabbed some more frozen packs. I'm putting them on my face, and I'm like, my eye is starting to shut now. So I'm like, okay. And I tell him, baby, I think I need to go to the urgent care. So I have the ice packs here, and he's like, okay, go ahead. I'll stay with the kids. And I'm like, I can't see out of this eye. So we're going to have to find somebody to watch the kids, and you're going to have to drive me. So we found somebody to watch the kids. He takes me to urgent care, and they look at me. The moment they look at me in urgent care, and they're like, excuse me, ma'am, you're going to have to go to the emergency room because you have a broken nose and we can't help you with that here. So you have to go to the hospital. So I'm like, great. Fine. So we drive to the emergency room. By this point, my left side was black and blue and my right side was just like this puff ball. And my nose was no longer pointing like north to south. It was pointing, east to west. It was this way. So I'm snapping pictures and I'm like, I cannot believe that this has happened to me. So they do the CAT scan and they confirm what everybody already knows, you have a broken nose, yada, yada, yada. And on the way out, the nurse, she was really slick. On the way out, she's like, by the way, what type of dog did you have? What was the breed of the dog that you had that, you were chasing? Just like as she's on her way out the door. And I'm like, oh, French Bulldog. And she's like, okay, thanks. And she walks out and I'm like, oh, she's really slick. That was her way of finding out whether it was domestic violence because it really looked like domestic violence. And My poor husband was standing right there, but it looked like he had literally pounded me in the face. So I was like, that was really smart of that nurse to ask that question, because it was like after the story had passed and we had already gotten CT scan, and like it was like such a sly way of her, you know, for me to like mess up or be like, I don't know what type of, you know. Anyway, so we get home, we know I have a broken nose, and I am like, this has got to be fixed. I just want to have my nose back, my normal nose. I don't want to change my nose. I want my exact same nose, just the way it was, but I just want it to be pointing north to south like it was instead of west to east. So I found somebody local nearby and booked him. I'm like, you know, in my mind, I was like, it's a nasal fracture. I mean, it's not like I'm going to get a rhinoplasty. This was what I was thinking. It's not like I'm going to change my nose. I'm just having somebody set the bone in place so that it heals straight and I'll have my regular nose back, right? So I didn't really even research, I mean, the doctor very well. I wanted him to be an ENT and I wanted him to be a plastic surgeon, and that was pretty much it. I didn't like care about looking at the before and after. I didn't care because that didn't matter to me, because I wasn't changing my nose. My nose was going to be the same nose. It wasn't supposed to be smaller. It wasn't supposed to be bigger. It was going to be the same nose. He was just going to set the bone. So had my surgery done like 2 months later, and after the surgery, you know, I was like, okay, well, you know, it's fine. You know, it's okay. The nose was definitely different than my original nose. It had more of a hook, like hanging here, and it had somehow been thinned in the front somehow. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to deal with it because, you know, that's it. You know, I fell and this is the consequences of me falling, and, you know. So I have some pictures here also of how my nose was after the surgery to fix the fractured nose, right? So that happened I mean, I did have some concerns, and I told the doctor, I said, you know, I'm concerned about like, this is kind of hanging now. And he's like, it's swelling. And I went to every single post-op appointment, and he just told me the same thing every time. You're still really swollen. Obviously, you fractured your nose from your accident, and, you know, plus then surgery on top, you're going to swell more than the normal person. So I was like, okay, well, come to like 2 years, you know, 2 years. And I started noticing things with my nose that were getting worse. The hook was getting larger. There was now like a hole where the original fracture was. My nose was now starting to bend again from east to west. And so, you know, I really started noticing, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to deal with it. But I have a few pictures just to show. So, oops. Oh, I'm new with this. So, okay. So here you can kind of see that the nose, even though it's a dead-on straight picture, the nose is going from left to right. And also there is like a little hook in the middle that hangs down between my nostrils. Like some kind of like extra meat or whatever. Here's another picture of that extra meat. Oops, sorry. Here's another picture of that extra meat that kind of just hung down. I don't know if you can see it. Kind of became like a hook nose. So I went from having like a very round, like roundish nose, like, to having like a round little Puerto Rican, not little, but, you know, round, pudgy Puerto Rican nose, to having like a hooked nose, which I don't even know what ethnicity. I don't know. I have no idea. But to me, I just felt like I was now like Hungarian. I was like, I look like maybe I'm of Hungarian descent. I just didn't feel, it just looked different to me. So 2-year post-op comes, and now my nose is really like, has really started like caving. And my right nostril was no longer a nostril. It was a slit that you could pretty much only fit like piece of paper in, it was completely fallen. So 2-year post-op comes. I go to the doctor and I'm like, look, I'm still really swollen. This hook is still here 2 years later. And, you know, this nostril is like, it's like falling. It's like I only have one nostril and, you know, something's not right. Well, the doctor's like, you're fine. You know, just, you know, still swollen. I'm like, I've been hearing this forever. So I'm like, I need to get a second opinion, obviously, because things were not right. My nose was whistling at night, or like when it was quiet and I could hear myself breathe, my nose was whistling, and I had constant sinus pressure. Like when you're on a plane and you know how you open your mouth and your ear pops? That was my 24-hour-a-day life for the last 2 years since I had fallen. It was like constantly every few seconds, you know, or a few minutes. So I had just taken it as this is normal, whatever. Well, I get a second opinion from another doctor, and he basically tells me you have a nasal collapse because apparently when you had the surgery after the fracture, your nose was supposed to be supported because after a fracture, your nose needs to be rebuilt up, and yours was not. So it has just recollapsed. And I'm like, great, wonderful. So I'm like, you know what? This time around, I'm going to really study nasal fractures in general and corrections for nasal fractures and doctors that specialize in nasal fractures and grafting, because now I needed grafting because this doctor tells me you're going to need either rib bone or some sort of cartilage. You're going to have to put stuff in your nose to rebuild the interior of your nose. So I did a lot of research. By a lot of research, I mean, it didn't take many months, but I was like obsessed about it. So I did it within like a month, like, you know, 4 weeks, three to 4 weeks. I just was, every time I was on the computer, researching. And I finally got down to like, you know, the top 5 doctors in the US for revision rhinoplasty. One of them was in Florida. One of them was in Texas. Both of them were good places for me because I have family in Florida and I have family in Texas. So I was like, okay, this is perfect. I'll pick one of them. Call them up the next day. And at this point, I know that I'm going to have to pay a lot of money to get my nose fixed. So I'm prepared. I'm ready to do it. So I call the doctor the very next day, the first one in Florida, and they're like, oh, well, he's booked for consults until 2018. Oh, my Lord, 2018. I'm like, what? I'm like, she's like, okay, let me jot you down. And, you know, so I jotted down my name for 2018 for a consult with him. And then I got off the phone. I was super depressed. Called the doctor in Texas. Same thing. He's booked until the end of 2017 for a consult. I'm like, this cannot be happening. I mean, how many people have freak accidents like me that need a revision? I don't know. Anyway, so I was really depressed, but the lady told me just keep calling back the offices, and because if somebody cancels, you want to kind of be like the first person to be like, hey, do you have a cancellation? So I did that, and miraculously, like a week later, I called the Houston, Texas doctor and called, and I said, okay, blah, 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 I'm just calling to see about a consult. She's like, no, it's still, you're still set for end of 2017. And I'm like, and then she stops, and I can hear somebody talking, like another secretary or, office person, office manager talking on the phone. And she's like, oh, hold on one moment. So they start talking to each other. And then she gets back on the phone and she says, the secretary right next to me just had a cancellation. The only problem is that, the cancellation is for, it was like 3 days from now. It's in 3 days. So I know you're out of state. I don't know if you're going to be able to make it. I'm like, I'm making it. Meanwhile, it's the week of Thanksgiving is when they had canceled for. And I have all of my husband's family coming in. I'm hosting, having all of my husband's family in for Thanksgiving. So I'm like, oh, so kind of a stressful time. But I was like, I cannot miss this appointment. I have to make this appointment. So I say yes, I book a flight, I fly down there, I get the consult. He tells me the same stuff that the other doctor had told me. He's like, you're gonna need rib, you're gonna need rib bone, you're gonna need ear cartilage, you're gonna need ear and skin cartilage, and you're gonna possibly need an alloderm implant to rebuild the structure of your nose. So I am like, okay, great, whatever. I'm going to do it because I need to do it, because at this point, nose is east to west, and, you know, right side's just a paper slit, and the sinus congestion was ridiculous. I mean, it was so it was ridiculous. Plus, I had started working out just like 6 months prior for the first time in eons, and I had noticed that now, for some strange reason, every time I work out, my nose just runs and runs and runs. So I'm like the mucus person at the gym. Every single time, every single day. Doesn't matter if I'm healthy or if I'm sick or if I'm not, I'm going to have runny mucus coming down my face the entire time I work out. Well, apparently that was just from the disaster of my nasal sinus mess that I had going on. But anyway, so I booked my surgery with this doctor. It's over Christmas holiday. So I am now like 10 days post, and a week, 5 days later or whatever, he took the splint off, and I saw my nose for the first time, and I already knew that, you know, I was already expecting that I was going to have a ham of a nose, which I did. I had a huge ham of a nose. Imagine the Wayans brothers from the movie White Chicks. That is exactly what my nose looks like. It is just like just like a mass, like a ham. It's a ham. I have a ham of a nose. But I was expecting that because, you know, I have to understand there's been rib put in there, there's been ear put in there, there's been skin put in there, there's been implants. So like my nose basically has been augmented just to rebuild it. So had the surgery. It was a 6-hour surgery. I was able to stay with my sister, and she's about a mile away from the doctor, which was great. Took our whole family with us over the Christmas break. Of course, my luck, we all get this norovirus or whatever virus while we're there. So a day after my surgery, everybody, including myself, are just vomiting. So you imagine I have stuff shoved up my nose with this thing. I'm like huge as can be, and it's just awful. So, it's been a nightmare. So I get my splint off. I get better from the virus. He takes it off. It's a ham. It's horrible. I already expect it to be like that because, you know, it's going to be swollen. And then they retape it, and they're like, you know, you can stay in Houston for like 1 more week, and then we'll take the tape off and look. But my husband was desperate to get out of there. He had already been there for X amount of days, and, you know, my sister was in the middle of moving to a new house, and it was hectic. So he was like desperate to get out of there. So we left back to Georgia. And of course, the day that I get back, I notice that there is now a mass hanging down my nostril. I don't even know if I want to show you. It is, apparently, it's my graft, which herniated out of my nose. It's like, I have no idea if you can see it. It's disgusting. So, I mean, I've got pictures of it. I could always show. But what happened was, for whatever reason, my graft herniated out of its spot. It's still secured by like 2 sutures. I was able to see a doctor here that knows my doctor from Texas. And so I got in with him, and it's still secured by 2 sutures. So it's clinging to life, essentially, but it's still hanging down. So I don't know if once it heals, they're going to cut off half of it, or if they're just going to leave it, or whatever. But the one of the doctors had told me basically it's supposed to shrink 90%. So if that's the case, then it won't really matter. But that is the current status of my nose. And I've had, you know, I guess it's normal to have post-surgery depression. I have not wanted to leave my house. I I just, you know, I am like going through the changes of my face, and it's frustrating for me because I never wanted my face to change. You know, I just, not that it's, you know, not that it's okay for people who are unhappy, and I don't know. It's just, I don't know how to explain myself. It's just, I never wanted my nose to change, you know, and I just feel like I would have, you know, I didn't really need surgery until the fact that I fell and had this freak accident. And so it's frustrating to me because now I'm going through this when all I want is my original nose. And now it's like, I really don't know if this is ever going to happen to have my original nose back. But either way, it is what it is. And one great thing out of this whole thing is, besides the fact that I have an exceptional surgeon, I had zero bruising, which is crazy because for a 6-hour surgery where they're shoving things up your nose and sinuses, and I mean, crazy. I'm telling you, no bruising, zero bruising. So I'm going to do a video, which will be much shorter, about pre and post rhinoplasty supplements, because I, believe me, have researched them all and I'm taking them all. And I can kind of attribute that to why I think I did not have bruising. I mean, the only thing I have is this swelling, which is inevitable because, like I said, I've got like literal ham in my nose. So there's nothing I can do. But, okay, so I will be done with this video, and I will post a quick video about pre and post supplements for rhinoplasty. But I just wanted to give a little background history. This was the whole background story of my nasal fracture accident, to nasal repair, to nasal collapse, to now revision rhinoplasty. So hopefully, you know, it will be helpful to somebody else out there. And I was able to get it off my chest. And thanks for watching. Sorry it was so long. And I'm going to try to edit the video because I have no idea how to do this and never done it. And maybe I'll shorten it up or do something like that. I don't know. I'll kind of learn as I go, I guess. But thanks for watching. Bye-bye.